The abandoned research station was vast and eerie, its halls filled with the echoes of footsteps and the faint hum of old machinery coming back to life. Lyra explored the place cautiously, her eyes scanning every corner as she tried to adjust to her new surroundings. The air inside smelled stale, like it hadn't been breathed in years, but the temperature was comfortable, and the lights flickered on one by one as Daniel worked to restore power. Claire busied herself setting up equipment they had brought from the horizon. She unpacked scanners, monitors, and communication devices, arranging them neatly on a large table in what appeared to be the station's main control room. "This will do for now," she said, glancing around at the dusty walls. "It's not perfect, but it'll give us a base to work from." Lyra watched silently, still unsure how to feel about this sudden change in her life. Just days ago, she had been living alone on Zorath 7, scavenging for scraps and piecing together fragments of her people's history. Now she was aboard a human ship, exploring an alien station and working alongside two strangers who seemed determined to help her protect the Nexus core. It was overwhelming, but also exciting. "Do you think the scavengers will follow us here?" Lyra asked finally, breaking the silence. Her voice was quiet, tinged with worry. Daniel paused his work and turned to look at her. "They might," he admitted, "but we've taken precautions. We disabled their ship before leaving. Zorath 7, it'll take them time to repair it. And even if they manage to track us down, this station is well hidden. They won't find us easily." Lyra nodded, though the thought of those armored figures returning sent a chill down her spine. She didn't want to admit it, but part of her wished she could forget about the scavengers entirely. She wanted to focus on understanding her new companions, learning about their world, and discovering what lay beyond the stars. But reality kept pulling her back. The core, the ruins, the danger lurking just out of sight. For the next few days, the trio worked tirelessly to get the station operational. Lyra helped where she could, using her knowledge of machines to repair broken panels and reroute power lines. She marveled at the humans' tools. They were advanced, precise, and unlike anything she had ever used before. At first, she felt clumsy and out of place, but Claire patiently showed her how everything worked, encouraging her to keep trying. "You're a quick learner," Claire said one evening as they sat together in the control room, reviewing data from Zorath 7. "You'd fit right in on Earth." Lyra smiled faintly, though the idea of fitting in anywhere still felt foreign to her. "I don't know much about Earth," she admitted. "What's it like?" Claire leaned back in her chair, thinking for a moment. "It's complicated, beautiful, but messy. There are oceans, forests, cities that stretch for miles, people everywhere, all trying to live their lives. It's not perfect, but it's home." "And what about your people?" Lyra asked. "Are they like you? Do they explore space too?" Daniel chuckled, overhearing the question. "Not everyone is like us," he said, joining the conversation. "Most humans stay on Earth or live on colonies close by. Only a few choose to travel the stars. It's risky, unpredictable. But for people like Claire and me, it's worth it." Lyra tilted her head, intrigued. "Why?" "Because there's so much to discover," Claire replied. "New worlds, new civilizations, new ideas. Every trip teaches us something about ourselves and about others. Like meeting you, for example. You've shown us things we never imagined." Lyra blushed slightly, unused to being praised. "I haven't done much," she murmured. "Just told you stories about my people." "That's more than enough," Daniel said firmly. "Your ancestors built incredible things. Their legacy lives on through you. That's important." As the days passed, Lyra found herself growing closer to Daniel and Claire. They shared meals together, talked late into the night, and laughed at silly jokes that often got lost in translation. Slowly, the fear and uncertainty she had felt when she first boarded. The horizon began to fade. For the first time in years, she felt like she belonged somewhere, even if it wasn't on Zorath 7. One evening, as they gathered in the control room to review their progress, Claire noticed something unusual on one of the monitors. "Wait," she said suddenly, leaning forward. "Look at this." Lyra and Daniel hurried over, peering at the screen. A series of blinking dots appeared on a map of nearby space, one cluster moving steadily toward their location. "Is that—" Lyra began, her voice trailing off. "The scavengers," Daniel finished grimly. "They've fixed their ship faster than we expected." Panic bubbled in Lyra's chest. "What do we do?" "We prepare," Claire said, already typing commands into the console. "We knew this might happen. Let's make sure we're ready." Over the next few hours, the trio worked frantically to fortify the station. They set traps in the outer corridors, rigged alarms to alert them of intruders, and armed themselves with whatever weapons they could assemble from spare parts. Lyra focused on reinforcing the main entrance, welding metal plates over weak points to slow down anyone attempting to break in. Despite their efforts, tension hung thick in the air. Lyra couldn't shake the feeling that they were running out of time. The scavengers were relentless, and she doubted simple defenses would stop them. Still, she pushed those thoughts aside, focusing on the task at hand. If nothing else, she refused to let fear paralyze her. When the attack came, it was swift and brutal. Alarms blared throughout the station as the scavengers breached the outer hull, their heavy boots echoing ominously in the corridors. Lyra, Daniel, and Claire huddled in the control room, listening intently as the invaders drew closer. "They're heading straight for us," Claire whispered, checking her scanner. "We need to hold them off until backup arrives." "Backup?" Lyra asked, confused. Daniel nodded. "We sent a distress signal earlier. Help should be on the way, but it'll take time." Time they didn't have. The sound of pounding fists against the reinforced door sent shivers down Lyra's spine. She gripped her plasma torch tightly, bracing herself for what was to come. The door buckled under the pressure, bending inward with a deafening screech. Lyra stepped forward, her heart racing. "Stay behind me," she said firmly, her voice surprising even herself. The scavenger leader appeared first, his armor dented but intact. He sneered at Lyra, raising his weapon. "You really think you can stop us, girl?" "Yes," Lyra replied, her tone steady despite the fear coursing through her veins. With a deep breath, she activated the plasma torch, its blue flame casting harsh shadows across the room. For a moment, no one moved. Then chaos erupted. Shots rang out, sparks flew, and shouts filled the air. Lyra fought fiercely, dodging attacks and striking back whenever she could. Daniel and Claire joined the fray, using makeshift weapons to fend off the intruders. The battle raged on, each side refusing to yield. Just when it seemed like the scavengers might overwhelm them, a loud rumble shook the station. Bright beams of light pierced through the walls, illuminating the scene. Reinforcements had arrived. A second human ship, larger and more heavily armed than the Horizon. The scavengers hesitated, caught off guard by the unexpected arrival. Their leader growled in frustration, barking orders to retreat. One by one, they fled back toward their ship, disappearing into the void. As the dust settled, Lyra slumped to the floor, exhausted but relieved. Daniel and Claire knelt beside her, checking for injuries. "You did great," Daniel said, smiling proudly. Lyra shook her head. "We did it together." And for the first time, she truly believed it. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she knew she wouldn't face them alone. For the rest of the 1250-word document, let me know if you'd like me to continue expanding this part further. The night was quiet as Lyra, Daniel, and Claire stood outside the ruins, catching their breath after the chaos below. The cold wind whipped around them, carrying tiny particles of dust that stung their faces. None of them spoke right away, each lost in their own thoughts. Lyra stared at the sealed archway, her mind replaying everything that had happened. She had done what she thought was right, protecting the Nexus core, but she couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't enough. Daniel broke the silence first. "We need to leave," he said, his voice firm but tired. "Those scavengers won't give up so easily. They'll be back, and next time, they might bring more people, or worse." Lyra turned to him, her brow furrowed. "Leave? But this is my home. I can't just abandon it." Claire stepped closer, placing a hand on Lyra's shoulder. "I know it's hard, but staying here isn't safe anymore. If those scavengers find a way into the chamber again, they'll stop at nothing to get the core. You've seen what it can do. Do you really want to risk letting them take it?" Lyra hesitated. Deep down, she knew Claire was right. Zorath 7 wasn't just lonely, it was dangerous now. The scavengers' arrival had changed everything. For years, she had survived alone, relying on her instincts and resourcefulness. But facing threats like this, she couldn't do it by herself. Not anymore. "What about the core?" Lyra asked finally, her voice soft. "If we leave, how will we make sure no one else finds it?" Daniel sighed, running a hand through his hair. "We can't guarantee that, but we can try to stay one step ahead of anyone who comes looking for it. Our ship has advanced technology. We can monitor the area from orbit, set traps if necessary. And if worse comes to worst," he paused, glancing at Lyra, "you can help us understand it better. Teach us about your people, their mistakes, their warnings. Together, maybe we can figure out a way to keep it safe." Lyra considered his words carefully. She didn't fully trust them yet, not completely. But she also knew she couldn't protect the core alone. Maybe leaving Zorath 7 wasn't such a bad idea. After all, hadn't she always dreamed of seeing the stars, of finding something or someone beyond her moon? "All right," she said quietly, nodding. "I'll go with you, but only if you promise me one thing." "What's that?" Claire asked. "That we don't use the core," Lyra replied firmly. "No matter what happens, no matter how desperate things get, we don't touch it. We don't try to control it or unlock its power. It stays buried, untouched. Promise me." Daniel and Claire exchanged a glance before nodding. "We promise," Daniel said. "The core stays where it is." With that settled, they began preparing to leave. Lyra packed what little belongings she had, a few tools, some scraps of metal, and the glowing sphere Claire had given her earlier. As she worked, she took one last look at her shelter, the place she had called home for as long as she could remember. Saying goodbye wasn't easy, but she reminded herself that this wasn't the end. It was a new beginning. When everything was ready, they made their way back to the humans' ship, the Horizon. It loomed large against the dark sky, its metallic surface gleaming faintly under the weak light of distant stars. Lyra hesitated for a moment before stepping inside, feeling a mix of awe and apprehension. This was unlike anything she had ever seen: smooth walls, blinking lights, and strange machines that hummed softly. "This is incredible," she murmured, her eyes wide as she explored the interior. "It's so different." Claire smiled, guiding her toward a seat near the front of the ship. "Different, but hopefully not too overwhelming. We'll explain everything as we go." As the engines roared to life, Lyra strapped herself in, gripping the edges of her seat tightly. She had never left Zorath 7 before, and the thought of traveling through space filled her with both excitement and fear. What would she find out? There? Would she truly belong among these humans, or would she always feel like an outsider? The ship lifted off smoothly, rising higher and higher until the crater and Zorath 7 itself disappeared from view. Lyra pressed her face against the window, watching as the barren moon grew smaller and smaller. A lump formed in her throat as she realized she might never see it again. But instead of sadness, she felt a spark of hope. For the first time in her life, she wasn't alone. She had companions, people who cared about her and wanted to help her. "So," Daniel said, breaking the silence, "where do we go from here?" Claire tapped a few buttons on the control panel, pulling up a map of nearby star systems. We should head to a secure location, somewhere we can regroup and plan our next move. There's a research station not far from here. It's abandoned, but it has the resources we need to keep an eye on Zorath 7. Lyra nodded, though part of her wondered if they were making the right choice. Leaving the core behind felt like leaving a piece of herself behind. But she trusted Daniel and Claire to honor their promise, to protect it, not exploit it. As the ship sailed through the vast emptiness of space, Lyra leaned back in her seat, closing her eyes. She thought about her ancestors, picturing their faces in her mind. They had made mistakes, yes, but they had also built incredible things. She hoped she could learn from their triumphs and failures, using their legacy to guide her decisions. When she opened her eyes again, she noticed Daniel and Claire talking quietly near the controls. They seemed relaxed, almost relieved. Lyra realized they must have been worried about her, whether she would agree to leave, whether she would trust them. She smiled faintly, grateful for their patience and understanding. For the first time in years, Lyra felt a sense of purpose. She wasn't just surviving anymore, she was living. And even though the road ahead was uncertain, she knew she wouldn't face it alone. Hours passed as the ship continued its journey. Eventually, they reached the abandoned research station, a massive structure floating in the void, surrounded by debris and remnants of past missions. It looked eerie, almost ghostly, but it was functional enough to serve as a temporary base. As they docked and began unpacking supplies, Lyra wandered through the station, taking in its empty halls and dusty rooms. Despite its desolation, she found beauty in it, a reminder that even forgotten places could hold potential. Maybe, just maybe, she could do the same. Rebuild, rediscover, renew. That night, as they gathered around a small table sharing a simple meal, Lyra looked at Daniel and Claire. "Thank you," she said softly, "for everything." Daniel grinned, raising his cup. "No need to thank us. We're in this together now." Claire nodded, smiling warmly. "Yeah, whatever happens next, we'll face it as a team." Lyra returned their smiles, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. For so long, she had believed she was the last of her kind. Now she realized she was part of something bigger, a connection spanning across worlds, civilizations, and time itself. As the three of them sat together, laughing and talking late into the night, Lyra allowed herself to dream of the future, of adventures waiting among the stars, of lessons learned and friendships forged, and most importantly, of a chance to honor her people's legacy, not by repeating their mistakes, but by building something new for the rest of the 1250-word document. Let me know if you'd like me to continue expanding this part further. The passageway beyond the archway was narrow and steep, its walls lined with glowing veins of crystal that pulsed faintly in rhythm with the hum Lyra had felt earlier. The air grew colder as they descended, carrying a strange metallic scent that made her skin tingle. Daniel led the way, holding a portable light source he had brought from the ship. Claire followed closely behind, scanning the walls with her device while muttering notes under her breath. Lyra brought up the rear, clutching her plasma torch tightly, her eyes darting nervously at every shadow. As they went deeper, the carvings on the walls became more intricate, depicting scenes of Valen life intertwined with symbols of energy and chaos. Lyra recognized some of the patterns, warnings she had seen before, but others were unfamiliar, almost alien. She couldn't shake the feeling that these images weren't meant for outsiders to see. Every step forward felt like trespassing into forbidden territory. After what felt like hours, they reached the end of the passageway. It opened into a vast chamber, its ceiling lost in darkness above. In the center of the room floated the Nexus. Core, a shimmering orb of light suspended in midair, surrounded by fragments of broken machinery and shattered stone. Its glow filled the space, casting eerie reflections on the walls and illuminating the faces of everyone present. Lyra stared at it, her breath catching in her throat. She had heard stories about the core her entire life, but seeing it in person was something else entirely. It wasn't just an object, it was alive, radiating power so intense it made her chest ache. She could feel it calling to her, whispering promises of knowledge and strength. But beneath those whispers was something darker, a warning she couldn't ignore. "This is it," Daniel said, his voice barely above a whisper. He stepped closer, his eyes wide with awe. "The Nexus core." Claire moved beside him, her scanner already whirring furiously. "It's incredible. The energy readings, they're off the charts. This thing could power an entire planet or destroy it." Lyra didn't respond. Her gaze remained fixed on the core, her mind racing. She remembered the visions she had seen when she touched the crystals, the triumphs, the failures, the destruction. Her ancestors had believed they could control the core, harness its power for good, but their arrogance had cost them everything. How could she trust Daniel and Claire not to make the same mistake? "We need to secure it," Daniel continued, turning to Lyra. "If someone else finds this place—" "No," Lyra interrupted, her voice firm despite the fear bubbling inside her. "You promised you wouldn't touch it. If we take it, if we try to use it, it'll only lead to disaster." Daniel hesitated, glancing between Lyra and the core. "We're not your ancestors, Lyra. We've learned from history. We can do better. You—" "Don't understand," Lyra snapped, stepping forward. "This isn't just about learning or doing better. The core, it amplifies intentions. Whatever you bring to it, good or bad, it makes stronger. My people thought they were ready, but they weren't. None of us are." Claire lowered her scanner, frowning. "So what do you suggest? Leave it here? Walk away and hope no one else comes looking?" "Yes," Lyra said without hesitation. "That's exactly what we should do. Seal the chamber again. Let it stay buried." Before anyone could respond, a loud crash echoed through the chamber. They turned toward the entrance, where several figures appeared, silhouetted against the dim light of the passageway. It was the man in armor from before, accompanied by a group of others dressed similarly. Their weapons gleamed menacingly in the core's glow. "You really think you can keep this to yourselves?" the leader sneered, stepping forward. His voice dripped with mockery. "The Nexus core belongs to those who have the will to wield it, not cowards hiding in ruins." Lyra instinctively moved closer to Daniel and Claire, her grip tightening on the plasma torch. "Who are you?" she demanded, though her voice wavered slightly. "What do you want?" The man smirked, gesturing to the core. "We're collectors. Scavengers, if you prefer. We find relics like this and sell them to the highest bidder. And believe me, there are plenty of buyers willing to pay a fortune for something like this." Daniel stepped forward, positioning himself between the intruders and the core. "You're not taking it," he said firmly. "This isn't yours to claim." The man laughed, raising his weapon. "And who's going to stop us? You?" Tension crackled in the air as both sides stood frozen, neither willing to back down. Lyra's heart pounded in her chest. She glanced at the core, then at Daniel and Claire. If they fought, they might lose. And if they lost, the core would fall into the wrong hands. But if they gave up now, they risked unleashing the very danger they had come to prevent. An idea sparked in her mind. "Wait," she said suddenly, stepping forward. All eyes turned to her, including the intruders. "If you want the core, you'll have to get through me first." The leader raised an eyebrow, clearly amused. "You? A child with a torch? Don't be ridiculous." But Lyra wasn't bluffing. She reached into her pouch and pulled out the glowing sphere Claire had given her earlier. Holding it high, she pressed it against the nearest crystal vein. Instantly, the chamber erupted in light as the crystals began to pulse violently, sending waves of energy rippling through the air. "What are you doing?" Claire shouted, shielding her face from the blinding glow. "Buying us time," Lyra replied, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. She focused all her attention on the sphere, channeling its energy into the crystals. The ground shook beneath their feet, causing chunks of rock to fall from the ceiling. Alarms blared in her mind, urging her to stop, but she ignored them. She had to protect the core at any cost. The intruders stumbled backward, caught off guard by the sudden surge of energy. Their leader growled in frustration, shouting orders to retreat. One by one, they disappeared back into the passageway, leaving Daniel, Claire, and Lyra alone in the trembling chamber. As the shaking subsided, Lyra collapsed to her knees, exhausted. The sphere fell from her hand, its glow dimming until it went dark. Claire rushed to her side, concern etched across her face. "Are you all right?" she asked, helping Lyra to her feet. "I'm fine," Lyra muttered, though her legs felt weak. She looked up at the core, still floating peacefully in the center of the room. For now it was safe. But for how long? "We need to seal the chamber," Daniel said, his tone urgent. "Whatever you did, it won't hold them off forever." Lyra nodded, forcing herself to stand. Together, the three of them worked quickly, using tools from the ship to reset the ancient mechanism at the entrance. As the final piece clicked into place, the chamber sealed itself once again, plunging them into near darkness. They climbed back up the passageway in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. When they emerged into the cool night air, Lyra took a deep breath, feeling the weight of what had just happened settle over her. She had protected the core, for now. But she knew the fight wasn't over. For the rest of the 1250-word document, let me know if you'd like me to continue expanding this part further. As the days passed, Lyra found herself spending more time with Daniel and Claire. They worked tirelessly in the ruins, studying the glowing crystals and trying to decipher the carvings on the walls. Lyra helped as much as she could, pointing out symbols she recognized and sharing what little she knew about her people's history. But the deeper they dug into the secrets of Zorath 7, the more uneasy she felt. The humans seemed fascinated by everything they discovered. Claire spent hours scanning the crystals with her device, muttering to herself as she recorded data. Daniel, on the other hand, focused on the archway that led to the sealed chamber where the Nexus core was hidden. He brought tools from their ship, tinkering with the ancient mechanisms in an attempt to unlock it. Lyra watched them closely, torn between curiosity and fear. She wanted to understand the truth about her people and why they had vanished. But every time she thought about the Nexus core, a chill ran down her spine. The visions she had seen when she touched the crystals haunted her, the triumphs, the failures, the destruction. She couldn't shake the feeling that uncovering the core would lead to disaster. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the ruins, Lyra decided to confront Daniel and Claire. They were sitting near their equipment, reviewing notes and discussing their findings. Lyra approached cautiously, clutching the glowing sphere Claire had given her earlier. It still pulsed softly, a comforting presence in her hand. "Why are you so determined to find the core?" she asked, her voice steady but laced with concern. "You've seen what it can do. You know how dangerous it is." Daniel looked up. From his notes, his expression thoughtful. "We're not just doing this for ourselves," he explained. "If the core is as powerful as you say, then someone else might come looking for it someday. Someone who doesn't care about the risks. We need to make sure it's safe before that happens." "But you promised you wouldn't touch it," Lyra reminded him, her tone sharper than she intended. "What if opening the chamber makes it unstable? What if it destroys everything, just like it did before?" Claire set down her scanner and sighed. "We understand your concerns, Lyra. Believe me, we don't want to repeat the mistakes of the past. But ignoring the problem won't make it go away. If we can learn how to control the core, or at least contain it, we might be able to prevent another catastrophe. Lyra frowned. Their logic made sense, but it didn't ease her worries. She had lived her entire life surrounded by the remnants of her people's downfall. Every broken machine, every crumbling wall was a reminder of what happened when power went unchecked. How could she trust two strangers to handle something her ancestors couldn't? That night, after Daniel and Claire returned to their ship to rest, Lyra stayed behind in the ruins. She wandered through the dimly lit chambers, her thoughts swirling. The glowing crystals caught her eye again, their light flickering faintly in the darkness. Against her better judgment, she reached out to touch one. The hum returned immediately, stronger this time. Images flooded her mind, more vivid, more intense than before. She saw her ancestors gathering around the Nexus core, their faces filled with awe and determination. They believed they could harness its energy to create a new era of prosperity. But their confidence turned to panic as the core began to destabilize, unleashing waves of destruction that consumed everything in its path. Lyra pulled her hand away, gasping for breath. Her heart raced as she tried to steady herself. The visions had felt so real, so personal. It was as if the crystals were warning her, not just about the core, but about trusting others with its secrets. The next morning, Lyra woke early and decided to explore the ruins alone. She needed time to think, to process everything she had seen and heard. As she walked, she noticed something strange, a faint trail of footprints in the dust. They weren't hers, nor did they belong to Daniel or Claire. Someone else had been here recently. Her stomach tightened with unease. Who could it be? The humans claimed they were the first to visit Zorath 7 in centuries. But if that was true, who had left these tracks, and why hadn't they shown themselves? Determined to find answers, Lyra followed the trail. It led her deeper into the ruins, to a section she had never explored before. The air grew colder, and the walls became smoother, almost polished. Carvings covered every surface, depicting scenes of conflict and chaos. In the center of the room stood a pedestal, cracked and worn with age. On top of it rested a small, glowing shard. Lyra hesitated, unsure whether to approach. The shard pulsed with the same energy as the crystals, but there was something different about it. Something darker. Before she could decide, a voice echoed through the chamber. "You shouldn't be here." Startled, Lyra spun around. Standing in the doorway was a figure cloaked in shadow. His face was partially obscured by a hood, but his eyes glinted with menace. He wore armor, unlike anything Lyra had ever seen, sleek and metallic, with strange symbols etched into the surface. "Who are you?" Lyra demanded, stepping back instinctively. "What do you want?" The man ignored her question. Instead, he gestured toward the shard. "That belongs to us. Hand it over." Lyra's grip tightened on the plasma torch she always carried. "I don't know what you're talking about. This is my moon. These are my people's ruins." "You have no right to take anything." The man chuckled, a low, menacing sound. "Your people are gone, dead, extinct. What's left of their legacy is ours now." Anger flared inside Lyra. How dare he dismiss her people so casually? She raised the plasma torch, ready to defend herself. "Leave. Now!" The man smirked, clearly unimpressed. "Fine. Have it your way." He reached for a weapon strapped to his side, a sleek silver pistol that gleamed ominously. "But don't say I didn't warn you." Before he could draw it, a loud noise erupted from behind him. Lyra turned to see Daniel and Claire rushing into the chamber, armed with tools they had modified into makeshift weapons. The man cursed under his breath and backed away, disappearing into the shadows as quickly as he had appeared. "What happened?" Daniel asked, his voice tense. "Are you okay?" Lyra nodded, though her hands were still trembling. He wanted the shard, said it belonged to him. Claire knelt beside the pedestal, examining the glowing fragment carefully. "This isn't good," she murmured. "If others know about the core and they're willing to fight for it, we're running out of time." Daniel turned to Lyra, his expression serious. "We need to open the chamber, now. Whatever's inside, we have to secure it before anyone else gets to it." Lyra hesitated, torn between her instincts and the growing sense of urgency. She glanced at the shard, then at the glowing sphere in her pouch. Both objects radiated power but also danger. Could she really trust Daniel and Claire to do the right thing? Finally, she nodded. "All right, but we do it together. And if anything goes wrong, we stop, no matter what." Daniel and Claire agreed, and the three of them returned to the sealed archway. Using the tools from their ship, they began working on the mechanism once again. This time, Lyra joined in, guiding them based on the symbols she recognized. Slowly but surely, the ancient lock began to shift. As the final piece clicked into place, the ground beneath them trembled. A low rumble filled the air, growing louder with each passing second. The archway split open, revealing a dark passageway leading downward. A faint glow emanated from within, pulsating like a heartbeat. Lyra took a deep breath, steeling herself for what lay ahead. Whatever secrets the Nexus core held, they were about to uncover them. Whether it would bring salvation or destruction remained to be seen. For the rest of the 1,250-word document, let me know if you'd like me to continue expanding this part further. Lyra stood frozen, staring at the two humans in front of her. Her mind raced with questions. Were they really here? Or was this some kind of trick? The glowing sphere Claire had given her felt warm against her side, a constant reminder that this moment was real. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling of unease that lingered in the back of her mind. Daniel and Claire seemed patient, waiting for her to say something. They didn't push her or demand answers. Instead, they let her take her time, watching her with curious but calm expressions. Lyra appreciated that. It made them seem less threatening, even though they were strangers from a world she barely understood. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Lyra spoke. "Why are you here?" she asked again, her voice firmer this time. "What do you want with my moon?" Daniel glanced at Claire before answering. "We're explorers," he said. "Our ship travels through space, looking for places no one has been to in centuries. Zorath 7? It's been forgotten by most of the galaxy. We thought it might hold clues about ancient civilizations." "Clues?" Lyra repeated, frowning. "You mean my people? The Veilans?" Claire nodded. "Yes. We've heard stories about your kind, about how advanced you were, how far you traveled, but we don't know much else. That's why we came here, to learn more." Lyra wasn't sure how to respond. She wanted to believe them, but part of her wondered if they were hiding something. Why would humans care about the Veilans after all this time? And why now? What could they possibly gain from visiting a dead moon? "You said you're looking for an artifact," Lyra said slowly, choosing her words carefully. "What kind of artifact?" Daniel hesitated, as if unsure how much to reveal. "It's called the Nexus core," he explained. "From what we've learned, it's a powerful object, something that can manipulate energy on a massive scale. Some say it caused the downfall of entire civilizations. Others claim it holds the key to unlocking incredible knowledge." Lyra's eyes widened. The Nexus core? She had heard that name before. In the ruins scattered across Zorath 7, there were carvings and symbols that mentioned it. Her ancestors had spoken of it in hushed tones, warning of its dangers. If the humans were searching for it, they clearly didn't understand what it could do. "You shouldn't look for it," Lyra said firmly. "It's dangerous. My people tried to use it once, and it destroyed everything." Claire tilted her head, studying Lyra closely. How do you know so much about it? I've seen the ruins, Lyra replied. I've read the records left, behind by my ancestors. They warned us not to touch it, but no one listened. And now they're gone. There was a long silence after that. Daniel and Claire exchanged another glance, their expressions unreadable. Lyra watched them carefully, trying to gauge their reaction. Did they believe her? Or did they think she was just making excuses to keep them away? We're not here to cause harm, Daniel said finally. We just want to study it, to make sure it doesn't fall into the wrong hands. Lyra shook her head. You don't understand. No one can control it. Not even my people could. It's too powerful. Claire stepped forward, her voice gentle. Then help us understand. Show us what you know. Together maybe we can figure out how to handle it safely. Lyra hesitated. She didn't trust them completely, but she also knew she couldn't stop them on her own. They had a ship, technology, and resources she could only dream of. If they wanted to find the Nexus core, they would do it with or without her help. At least if she stayed close, she could keep an eye on them and maybe prevent them from making a terrible mistake. Fine, she said reluctantly. I'll show you the ruins, but you have to promise me something. What's that? Daniel asked. You won't take the core, Lyra said. If you find it, you leave it where it is. You don't touch it, and you don't try to move it. Promise me. Daniel and Claire looked at each other again. After a moment, Daniel nodded. All right, we promise. If we find it, we won't touch it unless absolutely necessary. Lyra wasn't entirely convinced, but it was the best she could hope for. She gestured for them to follow her as she turned and began walking toward the edge of the crater. The ruins weren't far, but getting there would require crossing rough terrain filled with jagged rocks and deep fissures. As they walked, Lyra pointed out landmarks along the way, half-buried structures, shattered statues, and fragments of machines that had long since stopped working. She explained what each thing was, sharing bits of Vaylon history as she went. Daniel and Claire listened intently, asking occasional questions that showed they were genuinely interested. Despite her initial doubts, Lyra found herself warming up to them. They weren't like the invaders or conquerors she had imagined when she first saw their ship. They seemed genuinely curious, eager to learn about her people and their past. For the first time in years, she felt a sense of connection, a reminder that she wasn't completely alone in the universe. When they reached the ruins, Lyra led them to a large stone archway covered in intricate carvings. The symbols depicted scenes of triumph and tragedy, of great achievements followed by devastating losses. She traced her fingers over the patterns, explaining their meaning to Daniel and Claire. This is where the core was kept, she said, pointing to a dark opening beneath the archway. But it's sealed off. My ancestors made sure no one could reach it easily. Daniel knelt down to examine the entrance. Do you know how to open it? He asked. Lyra shook her head. No, I've never been able to figure it out. Maybe you can, with your tools. Claire pulled out a small device and began scanning the area. Lights blinked rapidly as data streamed across the screen. This is fascinating, she murmured. The materials used here, they're unlike anything I've ever seen. While Claire worked, Lyra wandered deeper into the ruins, exploring familiar paths she hadn't visited in months. Memories flooded, back as she passed crumbling walls and broken pillars. She remembered the hours she had spent here as a child, pretending the ruins were still alive, imagining what life must have been like when her people thrived. She was so lost in thought that she almost missed the faint hum coming from nearby. Pausing, she turned toward the sound. It was soft, almost imperceptible, but it grew louder as she moved closer. Following it, she discovered a hidden chamber tucked away behind a pile of rubble. Inside, glowing crystals lined the walls, casting eerie shadows on the floor. Curiosity got the better of her, and she stepped inside. The air felt different here. Thicker. Heavier. As she reached out to touch one of the crystals, the hum intensified, vibrating through her fingertips. Suddenly, images flashed in her mind. Visions of her ancestors working together, building machines and conducting experiments. She saw moments of joy and celebration, followed by scenes of chaos and destruction. Gasping, Lyra stumbled backward, breaking contact with the crystal. Her heart pounded as she tried to process what she had just experienced. Had the crystals shown her the truth about the Nexus core? Was this how her people had unlocked its power and ultimately paid the price? Before she could think further, she heard footsteps behind her. Turning, she saw Daniel and Claire standing at the entrance of the chamber. Their faces lit up with awe as they took in the sight of the glowing crystals. "How did you find this place?" Daniel asked, his voice filled with wonder. I don't know," Lyra admitted. "I just followed the sound." Claire entered, the chamber cautiously, her scanner already whirring. "These crystals, they're incredible. They're emitting some kind of energy signature I've never encountered before." Lyra frowned. "Be careful. I touched one and it showed me things. Memories, I think, of my people." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Memories? Like visions?" "Yes," Lyra said. "But it wasn't just pictures. It felt real, like I was there." Claire exchanged a glance with Daniel. "This could be important," she said. "Maybe these crystals are connected to the core somehow." Lyra felt a pang of unease. She didn't like the idea of tampering with the ruins or the crystals. Whatever secrets they held, they were meant to stay buried. But she also knew she couldn't stop Daniel and Claire from investigating further. All she could do was watch and hope they didn't unleash something they couldn't control. For the rest of the 1250-word document, let me know if you'd like me to continue expanding this part further. The moon of Zorath 7 was a cold and lonely place. It hung in the vast emptiness of space, far from any stars that could warm its surface. The ground was covered with gray dust and sharp rocks that glinted faintly under the weak light of a distant sun. In one of the many craters, there lived a young alien girl named Lyra. She wasn't like the others who had once called this moon home. Those others were gone now, lost to time and tragedy. Lyra was alone, the last of her kind. Every day was the same for Lyra. She woke up in the small shelter she had built from scraps of old metal and broken machines left behind by her ancestors. The air inside was stale, but it kept her safe from the freezing temperatures outside. Her first task each morning was to check the energy harvester, a clunky device that pulled tiny bits of power from the weak magnetic field of Zorath 7. Without it, she wouldn't have enough energy to survive. Lyra moved carefully as she inspected the harvester. Its wires were frayed, and some parts looked ready to fall apart. She sighed and crouched down, pulling out a small toolkit she carried everywhere. Fixing things was something she had learned to do out of necessity. There was no one else to help her, so she had taught herself how to repair the machines that kept her alive. As she worked, her mind wandered, as it often did, to thoughts of the past. Her people, the Valons, had been great builders and thinkers once. They had created cities that stretched into the sky and ships that traveled between stars. But all of that was gone now. A war had destroyed everything, their homes, their families, their way of life. Lyra didn't know much about the war, because no one had survived to tell her the full story. All she had were fragments, pieces of information she had pieced together from old records and broken artifacts scattered across the moon. Sometimes, when she felt particularly lonely, Lyra would sit by her shelter and stare up at the stars. She liked to imagine what it would be like to leave Zorath 7, to see the worlds beyond her moon. She had heard stories about other beings, creatures who lived on planets far away. Humans, they were called. According to the legends, humans had once explored the galaxy, seeking knowledge and adventure. But then they disappeared, leaving behind only whispers of their existence. Most Vaylons had dismissed these tales as myths, bedtime stories meant to entertain children. But Lyra wasn't so sure. Something about the stories felt real to her, like a memory she couldn't quite grasp. She often wondered if humans were truly gone, or if they still existed somewhere out there, hidden among the stars. One evening, as Lyra finished repairing the harvester, she noticed something unusual in the sky. At first, she thought it was just another piece of space debris burning up in the thin atmosphere. But this was different. It wasn't falling. It was moving steadily, almost purposefully. Lyra stood up and squinted, trying to get a better look. Whatever it was big, and it was getting closer. Her heart began to race. She had never seen anything like this before. Could it be a ship? If it was, who, or what, was piloting it? Lyra grabbed her plasma torch, the only weapon she had, and stepped cautiously toward the edge of the crater. The object grew larger as it approached, its metallic surface reflecting the faint light of the distant sun. It looked nothing like the ruins of Vaylon ships she had seen in the past. This was something new, something unfamiliar. As the ship descended, Lyra felt a strange mix of fear and excitement. Fear because she didn't know what to expect, and excitement because part of her hoped it might be true. Maybe the humans weren't just a myth after all. Maybe they really were out there. And now, they had come to Zorath 7. The ship slowed down as it neared the surface, its engines humming softly. Lyra held her breath as it hovered for a moment before touching down gently on its landing struts. Dust swirled around it, settling slowly as the noise of the engines faded. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then, with a soft hiss, a hatch opened on the side of the ship. Two figures stepped out, silhouetted against the bright light from inside the vessel. One was tall, with dark hair and broad shoulders. The other was shorter, with blonde hair and a determined expression. They wore suits that shimmered slightly, unlike anything Lyra had ever seen. She tightened her grip on the plasma torch. Unsure whether to run or stay, the taller figure raised a hand in what seemed like a gesture of peace. "We mean no harm," he said in a voice that sounded strange but understandable. Lyra blinked in surprise. How could they speak her language? Then she noticed the small device strapped to his wrist, a universal translator. Her people had used similar devices long ago, but she had never seen one in person. Who are you?" Lyra asked, her voice trembling. She tried to sound brave, but it was hard when she felt so small and vulnerable. "My name is Daniel Harper," the man replied. "This is Claire Bennett." He gestured to the woman beside him. "We're explorers. We didn't think anyone lived here." Lyra hesitated. Should she trust them? They looked human, just like the stories described. But how could she be sure? And why had they come to Zorath 7? She took a step back, clutching the plasma torch tightly. "What do you want?" she asked. Daniel exchanged a glance with Claire before answering. "We're looking for something, an artifact that might be here. We didn't know anyone was still alive on this moon. Can you help us?" Lyra frowned. An artifact? What could they possibly want with an old relic from her people's past? She didn't answer right away. Instead, she studied them carefully, searching for any sign of deception. Their expressions seemed genuine, but she knew better than to trust appearances. After a moment, Claire stepped forward. She held out a small object, a glowing sphere that pulsed softly with light. "Here," she said. "It's a gift, a token of goodwill." Lyra hesitated again, then reached out slowly to take the sphere. It was warm to the touch, and its light seemed to dance in rhythm with her heartbeat. She didn't know what to make of it. but she couldn't deny that it was beautiful. "Thank you," she said quietly, tucking the sphere into a pouch on her belt. "But I don't know if I can help you. My people, we're gone. Most of our history is lost." Daniel nodded, his expression thoughtful. "We understand, but maybe together we can find answers. You're not alone anymore, Lyra." Those words hit her harder than she expected. Not alone. For so long she had believed she was the last of her kind, stranded on a dead moon with nothing but memories of a forgotten civilization. Now standing before her were two humans, real, living humans, who claimed to want to help her. For the rest of the 1250-word document, let me know if you'd like me to continue expanding this part further.